folks, welcome back to Tent Outdoors. My name's Alan from season 10 of Alone. In today's video, I want to share some tips for hunting whitetails with archery equipment from a tree stand. Now, by no means am I an expert on the subject. I just want to share some things that I've learned over about a decade of hunting whitetails in the woods of British Columbia, Canada. Stick around. So remember, in British Columbia, we are not able to hunt over bait of any kind, use drones, or any sort of a game camera that sends the photo to your cell phone. So folks, tip number one, don't hunt where there's no whitetails, because that would be dumb. I like to set up a whole bunch of game cameras to let me know that there's whitetails in the area I'm going to hunt. I like to set up my game cameras months before the season starts. It gives me an idea of what bucks are in the area, what routes they're using, and I want to make sure that where I put up my stand, I have the best chance of getting a whitetail knowing they're in the area. And I don't check them too often. I check them maybe every 2 weeks or so. And I enjoy it because, for one, I enjoy the anticipation of seeing what might be on my cameras, whether it be an elk, a bear, a wolf, a grizzly, a big whitetail. It's just another excuse for me to go for a walk in the bush. My next tip is go deep in the bush. I like to hunt places where it's unlikely I'm going to run into other hunters. I'm not going to hear quads going by. I'm not going to hear 4x4 trucks going by. Get away from the road. Get away from other hunters. Remember, packing out your animal is part of the experience and adds to the enjoyment and memories of the hunt. Be willing to work harder than all the other hunters. My next tip is to hunt travel corridors in deep cover. I find that deer are much more apt to come into calls and investigate than they would be in an open area. And they're just far less jumpy. The other thing I like about hunting deep cover is that my shots are going to be closer. I like to make my maximum shots to be about 25 yards. I mean, I can shoot further, but man, deer come in so suddenly and stuff happens so quickly that I find my body is in like a mode where it's difficult to make such a long shot because I'm super excited. My heart's in my throat, I'm shaking, I'm just pumped with adrenaline. So I like to keep my shots close. When you do find a tree that you think is a great location, make sure you consider the sun. Are you going to hunt in the evening? Are you going to hunt in the morning? Make sure that sun's not coming up and it's going to be right in your face when you're hunting, because you and the deer don't like having sun in their eyes. Another note on tree selection, make sure you find a tree that has some good branches. I like to make sure I have branches around my feet and around the top part of my head, so just high enough so it doesn't interfere with my shot, but I find that I can just like nestle in this tree with branches all around me, and the deer and elk have a heck of a time seeing you out there. My next tip is practice shooting your bow from the height you're going to be hunting at, because it is different. Just practicing on the ground isn't enough. You need to make sure you know how your bow shoots, where it's going to hit, and make sure you have proper form when you're shooting high from a tree stand. Make sure that you bend at the waist. So practice, practice, practice. My next tree stand tip, have your stand high enough so your scent is above the deer's noses. Super important. I've had multiple deer and elk come in from all different sorts of directions, and they don't usually smell me. And that's because my stand's high enough that my scent is above them. Now, I've never really measured my tree stand height, but my estimation, it's usually between 20 feet and 25 feet. Now, another note on tree stand height, you need to adjust your aim a little bit on deer, especially if they're close up. So I usually set my pins a little bit higher, or I aim just a little bit high, because you have to consider the angle that that arrow is entering the deer, and you want to make sure that you're getting the goodies on the way in and on the way out. So the next tip is, once you've got your stand site selected, make sure that you've given yourself as many shooting lanes as possible, because I've learned over the years that most of the time animals come in where you don't expect them to. So I like to have my main shooting lane in front of me, and I always make sure I've got a lane cut behind me, and if I can, another one to my right or my left, just to give myself as many opportunities as I can if an animal does come in. Now, my next tip is from experience, have your bow ready, have your arrow nocked. When an animal comes in, it usually happens suddenly and you don't expect it. So if you're reaching around for your bow or trying to nock an arrow when an animal's approaching, there's a good chance you're going to get detected. So I hunt as often as I can with my bow on my lap or either in my hands, ready to go, to produce the least amount of movement as possible in preparation for the shot. I've been busted a few times reaching for my bow or standing up or just not being ready when an animal comes in. I always am so mad at myself because, again, it happens quickly and often when you don't expect it. And you become complacent, you start daydreaming, you're playing on your phone. Be ready. So my next tip is pretty hard to achieve, but ideally you should be able to sneak into your stand and sneak out of your stand without alarming deer of your presence. Because once deer know that you're there and you're moving around, you spook them a couple times, they're going to vacate that area. So my next tip, have multiple stand locations ready to hunt all throughout the season, because the wind could be wrong or another hunter could beat you to your spot and you have to have another place to go in case somebody beats you there. Also, you don't want to overhunt the same area for the same reason as previously in the video. You don't want to alarm deer of your presence because they will eventually vacate that area or visit that area less often. So hunt multiple different stands throughout the season. My next tip is hunt those cold snaps. Deer move so much more frequently when it's cool out, especially during the early season. So if you can hunt a cold snap after a period of warmth, get out there and hunt because they will be moving. And I learned this not only through experience, but also observing my game cams. Checking my game cams after like a really warm snap in weather, there's hardly any pictures of deer on my game cams, but as soon as it cools down for a couple of days, there's much more movement. So hunt those cold snaps. Deer don't like moving in the bush when it's hot, just like we don't like moving around in the bush when it's hot. So this next tip, it might not work in all areas, but in the area that I hunt, it's very effective. Early season light rattling has worked for me year after year. And it took me quite a while to figure this out, but the first time I was successful, I thought, oh, must have just been lucky. Maybe the deer was just heading this way anyways. But then it happened again, and it happened again, and it happened again this year. On September 17th, I was doing some very light rattling. Now the key is to just barely tickle them together in a non-aggressive way. And you'd be surprised how many deer come in to investigate to say, hey, what are these other bucks in my area? I got to check this out. And that's what happened to me on the 17th. I was just barely tickling them together about every 15 minutes or so, and this big guy came in to investigate, and I had a 12 or 15 yard shot on him right in front of my stand. I also saw that on my game cameras. That shot was early season. Those three bucks, they're just tickling their antlers together, just kind of sizing each other up non-aggressively. And I think what happens is other bucks in the area just want to investigate to see what other bucks are in their area before the rut actually starts. My last tip for whitetail hunting from stands with archery equipment is be safe. Make sure that you're attached to the tree, climbing up when you're hunting and climbing down. I've known a few people throughout my life that have taken nasty falls from their tree stands, so make sure you're safe out there. Folks, I'd love to hear some of your tips that you've learned over the years when you're hunting whitetails from tree stands with archery equipment. Put them in the comments. I know that I've still got a lot to learn, and I love to share and pick up some more tips from you guys, so leave them in the comments. My name's Alan, this is Tent Outdoors. We'll see you next time.